Good evening, fellow Plexers. Today's video is going out to James in the Plexaholics group, and it concerns Plex issues on a Ugreen NAS. First off, James, let me show you that I have a Ugreen NAS. It's a DXP 4800 Plus, and I've done some videos on it with Plex Server. I bought it as a test server. I'm really into the Synology ecosystem, but I wanted to play around with a Ugreen NAS, so I bought the better 4-bay. So while it doesn't say Ugreen any place, you can see that I'm running that Intel Pentium Gold 8505 processor, and it's got a decent Alder Lake UHD graphics iGPU in it. It's a great little NAS, and you did not mention what model you're running. For me to reset everything up, it'd take a couple days, and I'd have to wipe this unraid install that I've got a couple more videos to make on. So I really can't do much there. But if I go to my YouTube channel, and I go to content, and I go to playlist, someplace here, I have some Ugreen videos. Let's see, I don't often access the playlist this way. So, this is a Docker container install on a Ugreen NAS setup video. Now, I've seen different ways to install Plex, and I'm very partial to setting up Portainer first. So, if I scan your question here, let me read it. So, question. I've been running my Plex server for about a couple months now on a Ugreen NAS with no issues, adding shows, movies, home movies. Today I had the issue of TV shows and movies not wanting to rescan. I tried reading the folders and I couldn't see inside the folder through the Plex desktop. I made test folders with some TV shows and movies and they worked. I went to file permissions, and for the new folders, admin didn't have reader write checked. I went to my old ones and the same thing. I clicked to give admin read write permissions on old folder, and now I can see my TV shows and movies in the files on the Plex desktop. What's the issue? I didn't do anything different other than adding a home movie folder on Plex, but that was days ago, and I was able to watch my TV shows and movies. So I'm going to hazard a guess that you should start fresh and that Plex is not set up optimally. So I'm going to suggest this Marius hosting guide as something to read and reference as you follow my video to set up first Portainer after installing Docker, and then using Portainer to install a Synology, to install Plex server on your Ugreen NAS. It really comes down to this. You add this to Portainer and you adjust it for your own use. Now, permissions are granted through two parts: access to a volume and the PUID and PGID numbers, which is unique to your NAS. To install Portainer, Marius will show you how to SSH in to get your own values. Now, the container runs in its own shared folder. You create a Docker shared folder, then you create a folder to put the Plex configuration files in. This says use Plex HW. And then you have a path to data. I do not like his example, but we need to talk about that once we show you how not to set Plex up. So on the Ugreen site, I found this tutorial to install Plex. And I didn't watch the whole video they have associated with it, but it's garbage. It kind of skims through things fast. You have to pause to see some of the variables he set up by setting up a Docker container manually. And there's a reference to an NVIDIA graphics card or an NVIDIA GPU. And that's like a full stop. There's no NVIDIA GPU at any Ugreen NAS, so This video is hot garbage, whether that's the only thing wrong with it or not. And then as a Synology enthusiast, I really watch a lot of content from Space Rex on YouTube or Robbie at his NAS Compares site. But I don't like how he guides people into installing Plex either. So if we slide down, he's having you create Plex manually, but then he's giving what I think is poor advice. A separate shared folder for TV shows, a separate shared folder for pictures, a separate one for music and movies, and then he has a config folder and a data folder and a transcode folder. You don't need all that. And your media should not be in separate shared folders either. And the big reason is once you buy a big boy NAS with lots of storage, or a big girl NAS with lots of storage, invariably moving Plex from a desktop PC to a NAS means you might be interested in a trash guide setup. Robbie's not prepping you for a trash guide setup. Marius isn't really prepping you either, because this path makes you think you need another one for music and another one for TV shows, when really this should just be Plex Media or just media. Like, remove this, and even if you just have a simple shared media folder named media, you're further ahead. This is an alias. It should just say something like My Plex Media, so when you're in Plex, that path sticks out like a sore thumb. Everything to the right of the colon is an alias, so make it stick out. My Plex Media, and that alias leads to whatever is defined here to match your real media. So someplace in the trash guide's instructions, it tells you that having separate shared folders when you're doing this automated acquisition system will break what's called atomic moves. And you've got to see it to believe it. So let's do it this way. Now, I have permission to see everything in these folders through my Synology NAS and desktop, and if I was running the Ugreen OS on my Ugreen NAS, I could do everything the same. So don't get caught up in Synology versus Ugreen. Every NAS is pretty much the same in how it works with a file browser on your desktop PC. So I have a test server running here. If I wanted to move, let's go into this sort folder here. This is all public domain except for this one huge file. You'll see it's 89.5 gigabytes. If I wanted to cut this and I wanted to move it any place in this shared folder, it's just right click and paste. It's there instantly. If I wanted to move it into another shared folder, let's move it into the Docker shared folder. If I pasted it, it's like watching paint dry or molasses flow down a cold hill. It's going to take 21 minutes to move that big file. So let's cancel that. Let's get rid of that partial copy. And let's move back in to, where was I? I gotta go up a level. Let's go back in here, cut it, and paste it into this folder. Okay, so that's the difference between having atomic moves and not having atomic moves. So how I suggest setting it up, well, let's go back to the trash guides, because I would like to improve on their structure. They have one shared media folder, and a trash guides can be this type of setup or this type of setup, which is much preferred in my opinion. So everything in one shared media folder, things are coming into this folder, the subfolder, into these subfolders basically, and then the automation renames it and moves it into the appropriate. So something from this folder gets renamed and moved into here, And it's instantaneous because it's all one shared media folder. Now they give the warning that if you use different storage someplace, I don't know where they give the examples of bad pass, but it's someplace in here. If you had multiple shared folders, like if you had a shared folder called incoming and then one down here called movies, well, it's that slow as molasses transfer from one shared folder to another. So I just want to point out that when you buy a NAS, you've got a higher propensity of wanting to do a trash guide setup. So create your media structure with that in mind so you don't have to redo things down the road. Seeing that I prefer and recommend a Usenet trash guide setup, I'm going to suggest one shared media folder like I have. Name it media. No spaces, no uppercase letters. Name it media-plex. Name it plex-media. Name it my-plex-media, all lowercase. Inside that, create sort folders for every type of Plex library there is, with a possible exception of a music library. It's not often you're going to have multiple music libraries, but I happen to have my main one. I had a friend who passed away on hospice, elderly. I created a curated music library for her so that her caregivers and family could play music she liked through her TV. And then I have a little mixtape library separate from my main one. So if you're only going to have one music library, that can just be named music. But inside my TV library sort folder, I have these individual structures to point individual Plex TV shows or TV show libraries at. A main one, I got like 900 shows. A kids one, which is really named TV Cartoons in Plex, this has maybe 120 folders of different shows. If you want a DVR under Plex, why have commercial content go into your non-commercial TV show libraries? You might want to keep it separate. And then even though you might have a cartoon library, you might want to keep anime separate into its own structure. The same with a movie library. Well, a movie library sort folder. My main movie library, a kids movie library. Again, the DVR. A documentary movie library, a concert, and live performances. Now, why this is important is in the trash guide setup, you also have a SOB NZBD folder, and everything comes into this complete folder. So under a trash guide setup, Radar looks for movies coming into this acquisition folder. Radar will pick it up once it's there, rename it, and move it into the appropriate library. With this nested structure, you can have one instance of Radar pulling documentaries into this structure, regular movies here, juvenile or kids movies here, live performances there, stand up there. The only thing Radar cannot do is pull the same movie twice. So it can't pull one into the main folder and then a second instance into a 4K folder. You can only pull one movie, and you define the type of movie you're pulling when you set it up. Sonar handles TV shows. So Sonar can pull your regular shows into a structure like this, cartoons into structure like this, and anime into structure like this. Everything is lowercase, no spaces, until you get to this level where your actual TV shows are. So this is named exactly as it is at TVDB with a TVDB source ID. No periods or underscores between natural spaces. Let's click into this one. Just like Plex describes, season space 01 through season space 03, and everything's nice and neat. I have Radar named similarly to how I name manually through FileBot. That's a whole other discussion. So good structure is what you want. Nested in one shared folder is what you want for a future trash guides set up. And even if you're not ready for that, it's neat and tidy. And the only permission that the Docker container needs is to this shared folder and to the Plex Docker instance in this structure. So it's in the Docker shared folder there. All right, so what else are we going to show you? Let's go back to the Marius hosting guide. So I don't like this. This makes people think they need extra lines for TV shows and music. So let's show you how that should look. Now this is just to the configuration. So if you name your subfolder in the Docker shared folder Plex HW, it has to match up here. If you just name it Plex, like I would suggest, you would just have it be Plex. So let's explore this with my example from Portainer. So these instructions have you install Portainer first. I've got Portainer already up, and I'll show you the difference between Marius hosting example and what I used. I can't seem to find the corner. What I used on my Synology NAS as a test server. All right, so you see everything's just about the same. I'm using the same Linux server image. I've named the container Plex. I've got everything the same until we get to the volumes. So this NAS has a SSD volume with two 1 terabyte SATA SSDs running in a RAID 1 configuration. So that's where my Docker shared folder is on that fast SSD volume. So that references volume 1 just like he does on this rusty volume. So I have three folders or three shared folders that this Plex test install has permission to. One is some media on the SSD itself, so it's in that shared folder, and this is the alias for it. Everything to the right is the alias you see inside Plex. Everything to the left is the actual folder structure. And because it's a test server, I want to show performance difference off the SSD versus off the rusty volume, which is volume 2. And then I want to give that test server access to another shared folder for channels DVR. This is a lot. This is because of testing purposes, when I would suggest in a Ugreen NAS having a couple 1 terabyte supported off their hardware list NVMe drives as a RAID 1 volume to run your Docker containers and Synology packages on, and then have volume 2 be your rusty volume. So in this case, you'd only see a line for that and a line for this. If you're not going to run SSDs as a volume, the rusty volume would end up being 1, just like your Docker path is. So it's really a choice of starting over, I think, if you follow examples like this or like that. If you haven't followed the Marius guide, I'd start over, and I'd strongly recommend watching this video, because that'll help you get through the pitfalls that are still left in the Marius hosting video. Let me just look at your post again. So I'm not sure how things look for you in Plex. So let's have that be the last part of what we're doing. All right, so here's the web app. Let me go to the test server we've been talking about, the Synology example, because it's a very similar setup to a Ugreen NAS. So here's my test unraid server running on the Ugreen now, and here's the one we've been talking about. So if I drop down and I go to Manage Libraries, you can see these libraries I have set up. So when you scan, you should only see the movies. You shouldn't see any folder structure. So I want to ask if you're in the Library tab and somehow you're looking at folders. Because if you are, you shouldn't be doing it that way. And if you are doing this, I suspect that your media might not be named correctly to scan in and get matching metadata. If you don't see the movie poster and you don't see a release date and a rating, genres, reviews, a description, and all this stuff, the cast, you're not set up right. And I have plenty of naming videos on my YouTube channel. FileBot's a great help with that. And bookmark this page, and also bookmark naming and organizing your movie, multiple editions, multiple versions, and this one here, naming and organizing your TV show files. You just have to follow the rules to have media match, and I suggest using either the IMDb or the TMDB source ID in the movie folder, and then doing the same thing in your TV show library. I would suggest using the TVDB source ID and changing an advanced setting to pull episode ordering from TVDB, and simply ignore TMDB as a guide for naming episodes. I say this because, again, Plex installed on a NAS, a Ugreen Synology, QNAP, someone's self-install of Unraid or Proxmox or TrueNAS, any brand NAS, whether you put it together or you buy it, might lead to a trash guides setup, and Sonar, which is the automatic acquisition system for TV shows, sources from TVDB. So that's where I'll end it. Let's go to Plex Server. If everything's named from TVDB for a TV show library, when you create that TV show library, you should go into the advanced settings and pull episode ordering from TVDB. By default, it's the movie database. So always prep for a trash guides install, because you may think I'll never have it, but the amount of storage you have in a NAS and the ease with the automation, that's just setting yourself up great to not have to rework things. So if you change your mind about the automation, it's easy to jump into it without having to fix everything that's wrong to start with. I know these get long sometimes, and I appreciate your viewership. Anyone else who's watching it, James, I got plenty of videos on the channel for you, and I'll probably before the end of the year, I'll reset my Ugreen NAS back up with a UGOS and get a Plex server back on it. Thanks for watching, and happy Plexing.